Hello, my name is Barbara Kay, and on behalf of my co-host Susan Pertnoy and the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County, I'd like to welcome you to our program, Mosaic.
We're here today to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Mandel JCC Book Festival. We'll be back with our program and our guests after this brief message.
What if you could change the world? You can. We can do it together. With the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County, you are here, and we are all connected. Together, we can enrich Jewish life, care for vulnerable populations, and build global Jewish community. That's what we do, every day, here at home and around the globe.
Welcome back, and welcome to you, Mindy Henkin, the brand new CEO of the Mandel JCC.
Yes.
This is very exciting to get you on the beginning of your new tenure as CEO.
Thank you so much for having me.
How does it feel?
It feels great. I've been in the community for 12 years. It's always been my dream to be an executive director of a JCC, and I get to do it in Palm Beach, a community I love.
Well, it is wonderful, and the JCC offers such a wide array of opportunities for our community. Can you tell us about the mission?
Sure. The mission of the JCC is to build a strong Jewish community by providing high-quality programs close to where people live that connects people to Jewish life. And the mission really is infused in everything that we do, for programs for our youngest children to senior citizens, families, everyone in between.
You really run the gamut of the population.
We do.
You have a brand new facility in Palm Beach Gardens,
Yes.
which is sensational, and a Boynton Beach facility where it's undergoing a lot of renovation, I hear.
Yes, the Boynton Beach JCC has been in operation for 15 years. We get over 1,000 people a day who walk through the doors, so it's heavily trafficked, and it needs a renovation. So we're starting our first phase of the renovation, adding 2,500 square feet to the front of the building, renovating the first floor of the main building, and this is just the start. We're going to be adding more facilities and improving our existing facilities.
That's wonderful. Can you talk about some of the wonderful programs that you offer?
Sure. Well, today we're celebrating the JCC Book Festival. We are very proud of the cultural arts programs that we run, the film festival, the book festival, concerts. We have a very extensive adult education program, wellness programs, fitness classes, and sports and aquatics. And then we're really proud of the offerings that we have for children. Our early childhood center in Palm Beach Gardens and in Boynton Beach, we serve 360 children every day in our preschools.
That's amazing.
And we have just about 1,000 children in our summer camps.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
Are they at both locations?
At both locations.
That's fantastic. And how is it, how do you work with the Meyer Academy, because you share the same campus up
in Palm Beach Gardens? The Meyer Academy and the Mandel JCC are on the same campus. So the students, when they are let out of school at the end of the day, they come over to the JCC, and they have after-school classes and programs, sports, swimming, arts, science, all different kinds of classes. And then in the summertime, all the students from Meyer Academy and children from all over the community, from all the different schools, come to us for summer camp.
That's really terrific. What about the cultural arts program? Can you go into a little more detail about
Sure.
what you offer?
You know, this year is a really special year. We're celebrating 25 years of the Jewish Film Festival, 20 years of the Book Festival. We bring over 20 authors to the community for programs throughout the entire service area. Our film festival has expanded to not just the 2 weeks in the January, but now we have film screenings throughout the year. We bring in concerts. We have all different kinds of cultural programs. It's something I am really proud of.
It sounds like you have everything for everybody in the community.
Yeah, one of the taglines of the JCC is something for everyone.
That's terrific. We are going to speak to Nancy Sims. She apparently was an integral part on developing the book festival.
Absolutely.
So we would like to speak to her, and it's a pleasure being with you, and
Thank
congratulations.
you so much. Thank you.
Welcome, Nancy Sims.
Thank you.
You were a past president of the JCC and an integral part of the book festival program. You initiated it, I think.
I was there from the beginning, that's for sure. A lot of people should take credit, but I've been involved for more years, more than 20 years, that's for sure. The luncheon's 20 years, but we always had a book festival within the building of the JCC in West Palm Beach.
Well, this is a very exciting year for the book festival. You have a lot of headliners. How do you choose your books?
So the great thing is we go to New York, and over 3 days, it's like speed dating, and we fall in love with an author in 2 minutes. They speak for 2 minutes, and we either say yay, nay, or maybe we want to vet the book and check them out a little more. And ironically, we have just always come up with winners. And as I told Nicole last night, we fell in love with you in 2 minutes, and you've met our expectations. So we're very excited to have her as our featured luncheon speaker this year.
Yes, you're referring to Nicole Monis, who's written a number of books, and you're featuring her Night in Shanghai.
Correct.
Tell us about some of the other authors that you're featuring. I think you have 25 events this year.
Yes, so we have events between Palm Beach Gardens, West Palm Beach, and Palm Beach. And in Boynton Beach, we have a whole series as well of authors coming in. And we have some real headliners, and we have the hidden gems that people may not know about yet, but they will be big authors. Boris Fishman is going to speak in Boynton about the replacement life, about becoming a Russian emigre and his experience. And we have 2 favorites coming back who have worked jointly on a book, an anthology, Pam Janoff and Allison Richmond. And they are going to talk about Grand Central, which is an anthology of authors that have written a book with characters meet in Grand Central Station in New York.
Oh, interesting.
So that's going to be at the Palm Beach Gardens branch at the JCC. We have a sisterhood luncheon. We have children's events. We really try to run the gamut, and we have some historical speakers coming as well.
That's wonderful. What motivates you to be a part of this?
I'm passionate about books. I've always been passionate about books and writing, and I love the experience, and I really love people discovering new Jewish writers who have something to say to us.
Well, you've done a wonderful job for the community, and we look forward to many more interesting times with new authors. And on that note, we're going to now have Barbara speak to Nicole Monis. Thank you so much for being with us.
And thank you for featuring us. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Nicole Monis, I have been dying to meet you.
Thank you so much. You too.
Tell me how you say hello in Chinese or goodbye.
Ni hao.
Ni hao. And goodbye?
再见.
Zetian.
See you
Okay.
again until we meet next.
Till we meet next. The reason I'm talking about it is because you have had an extraordinary success in China. You started, I think, in 1977, if I'm not correct.
Right, when no Americans were there.
No.
So I have to point out it didn't take much to achieve success because nobody was there doing
but
anything.
you had the foresight. You looked over and you thought, this is a big place.
That's true.
The revolution is over. I maybe can do something there.
You know, in 1976, first Zhou Enlai died, and then 9 months later, Mao Zedong died.
Right.
And in those days, we didn't get much news about China, but that news came through. And when that news came through, I was only 24, but I thought, dang, this is it. China's going to step up and become a world power. It's going to take 25 or 30 years. I've got to get in there.
Yeah, but tell me how you got in there.
Well, I went to the Small Business Administration and I asked them for a list of everything China had exported in the last year. So they gave me a list of everything China exported in 1975.
You kidding? You asked for that?
Yeah, I walked into the Small Business Administration office, Department of Commerce office in my town. They said, yes, we have that list, and they pulled out an alphabetized list that covered maybe 2/3 of a page. And I went down from the top. I remember seeing boron. I'm still not exactly sure what boron is, so I kept going. I got to fireworks. I do know what fireworks are, but I decided to pass on that. And when I got to the T's and I saw textiles, I thought, I can learn that. I can learn to trade in textiles. And so that's what I did.
Wow.
The 70s were a time when there was a big demand for wool. Remember, dress for success.
Right.
And suddenly women needed wool blazers or perhaps even a whole wool suit. And there was a lot more need for wool and piece goods. And that's the business that I decided to go into.
Yeah, but it's interesting. You were in it for a while. You had to learn the language. You had to learn how to even get around the culture.
I had to learn China. And it took me 15 years of doing business there before I even began to feel, I think I understand this place well enough to write about it now.
Yeah.
I did not feel that until I'd worked there for 15 years. It was very difficult for me to understand it, hard as I tried. It took time.
I would think so. You've written, so I have 3 of the 4 books you've written. This is the latest, Night in Shanghai. Before we talk about the period of history at that time with the Japanese and the entire story, what got you involved really in such a deep way? What do you think created the passion? I mean, you were successful with your textile business.
It was before that. When I first arrived in China in 1977, it was only 6 weeks after the government formally ended the Cultural Revolution. The entire country was in lockdown. Everybody was suffering from mass PTSD. Nobody would look you in the eye. Everyone was wearing the Mao uniform. People had recently been starving. And so as soon as I arrived there, I knew that what was in front of me wasn't the whole story, and my interest was caught for life. It was the most interesting thing I had ever seen. Think about this. China was pre-modern then. When I first arrived, there was no plastic. There were no ballpoint pens. Telephones had rotary dials. And so it was like falling back in time. It was very interesting to be in a place which modernized in the space of less than 20 years, undertook the changes that America took 80 years to go through. It was like witnessing a gigantic social experiment. And once I saw what was happening, I didn't want to leave. I wanted to keep my business going so I could learn about it.
Yeah.
So I could watch.
You know, that's exceptionally intense. You're a musician, actually.
Well, I was trained in classical music to play piano, but I was not good enough. I was not talented enough to go to conservatory and become anything more but a piano teacher.
Yeah.
So I left the study of music behind and went to university instead.
Okay.
But I love music.
You do, I know, because the way you write, the intensity of your writing, it has a rhythmic kind of feel to it. It has to be from background of music.
That is an amazing perception because I never studied writing. I haven't taken an English class since high school. The only art I have formal training in is classical music. So I write from my knowledge of classical music. I approach the opening of a novel like an overture. The overture declares the intentions of the piece, it states the themes, it shows the problems that are going to occur, and even gives a hint at what the resolution might be. And those themes are developed throughout the piece, voices, counter voices, and that's really what I follow when I write. I don't know anything about the formal process of writing. I only know about the formal theory of music.
Music, yeah, but each one of your novels has a specific focus.
Right, and that rises from my interest in China and my desire to show the world what interesting stories and fascinating things have happened there.
Yeah, but we have to take a break and then we'll come back. But before I take the break, I just want to mention the fact that their cooking and food is something we're going to talk about when we come back.
Okay, please.
All right, we'll be back with the remainder of the program right after this brief message.
When I was young, I went to Jewish summer camp, traveled to Israel, and participated in leadership development groups. Today I'm teaching my children that being part of the Jewish community helps keep our heritage and traditions alive and vibrant, and can be fulfilling, exciting, and fun.
At the age of 90, I started a second career, delivering meals to homebound seniors. Because I'm a senior myself, I know how tough it can get. If somebody is in trouble and needs help, we need to be there for them. As Jews, it's who we are. It's what we do.
When my family needed help, we turned to the Federation, and they were there for us. How good it was for us to know that we are not alone.
Community, like every gift, counts. Together, we can ensure a vibrant Jewish future. Federation and you, changing the world together.
Welcome back. I'm here sitting with Nicole Monis, the author of the year.
Thank you.
Well, actually, you're the guest speaker for today's JCC luncheon, which is very nice.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Prior to the break, we were talking about the subjects of your book and the fact that cooking and food is very basic in every one of your books.
Well, of course, I love to eat. And when I first arrived in China in 1977, as strange as it sounds, I qualified as a guest of state because there were almost no Americans who arrived in China for any reason in 1977. So from the beginning, even though much of China was starving and all of China was on rations, I was taken to the most extravagant, hours and hours long, multi-course meals you can imagine from the beginning, and exposed to a world of Chinese cuisine that is huge, magnificently diverse, and far greater than anything I'd experienced in America. So naturally, in the 18 years I did business in China, I ate whenever possible and poked around to learn what I could whenever possible. It wasn't, however, until Gourmet magazine hired me to write about Chinese food.
Was Ruth Reichel,
Yes.
was it? Yes.
She read my first book, and there's a food scene in it, and she had her staff contact me and ask me to review restaurants in China. And I said, I think you've got the wrong person. I'm not a food writer. And she said, oh no, I read that banquet scene in Mongolia. You can do this. And thanks to her, I learned so much more about Chinese food. I could never have written The Last Chinese Chef without years of writing for Gourmet. They gave me the excuse to go all over China and interview chefs, interview food scholars. In China, people in universities actually teach the history of food culture and the history of restaurants, which isn't considered a real subject here.
No, but really, you're right. But what's interesting about it is it really sets the stage for the community that you're in.
Absolutely.
It's incredible. It's really incredible. Particularly, I found it very interesting in this book. Basically, this is not a book on cooking.
Right.
But it does, every time somebody sits down and has a meal, there's an elaborate discussion about the meal. And it's very...
I just can't resist, even if it's not a food
but
novel.
I love it. The history of this is interesting, though. This took place in a very specific time in China.
Right, in the 1930s.
Right.
Which was the Chinese Jazz Age. And all the years I have spent in China, and in Shanghai is a city I have been in at least once a year during the last 37 years, except for the years in which I was giving birth. But in all that time, I never thought of setting a novel in that era until I stumbled across the forgotten history of American musicians, Black American musicians, being recruited from the west coast of the United States, singly and in whole orchestras, to go to China on contract and play, where they encountered a world free of prejudice, filled with opportunity, only to be blown apart when the war broke out.
Yeah, but I tell you, right, Thomas Green, who is one of the fictitious characters.
Then there's only four in this book.
Four of them, I know.
Everyone else really lived.
No, that's what's so interesting.
Yeah.
By the way, I should make a preference about the fact that the book is historical. It has some accurate historical
Everything that
accounts.
happens in the book really happened.
That's
Everything.
what I'm saying, but you do make up other characters.
Yeah, the characters at the center of the story are fictional, but everyone who circles around them in and out of their lives really lived. And there's a real epilogue at the end that tells you what happened to
them.
everyone. So first I was drawn into feeling I had to write this novel when I learned that American musicians were part of the scene there, and not just arts and culture, but modernization. This new music was part of modernization. But then when I started researching it, and I found two stories of Holocaust heroism in China, one that is little known in the West and one that is completely unknown in the West until now, then I knew I had to make it a story about jazz and the Holocaust.
Yeah, you know,
because Shanghai was a city in which Holocaust resistance was centered in China.
Well, there were a lot of Jews living there.
Exactly. There were Jewish people already living in Shanghai from two waves. There were the Sephardic Jews, originally from Baghdad,
Right.
made money in India, and came to Shanghai in the late 19th century when it was a little fishing village. And they are the Rockefellers who built Shanghai. They were the tycoons who were at the top of the city's economic scene by the time World War II broke out. Then there was a second wave that came from Russia around the time of the
Right.
First World War, and were encouraged to settle in North China. And then many Jewish people were born in North China and eventually drifted down to Shanghai. And then the final wave of the refugees that came after Kristallnacht. And that's the part that made me realize it has to be a story about how they got there and what happened to them. And then my researcher stumbled across, in a Chinese military history archive, documents related to the Jewish resettlement plan, which was a grand plan hatched by the Chinese government in 1939 to set aside part of Yunnan province adjoining Burma for the permanent resettlement of European Jewry to be started with 100,000 refugees they were going to hand select for survival from Europe. And the whole thing was hidden, the law was passed, the money was raised, and the couriers carrying the money to build the soup kitchens and barracks along the Burmese border were apprehended and murdered by Japanese agents in 1939. That was the end of the plan. Hitler threatened Chiang Kai-shek, and Chiang Kai-shek shut it down. And after it was shut down, maybe it was shame at its failure, or maybe it's because the communists won the Civil War and this was an act of the nationalist government. Whatever the reason, it was forgotten and put away in a drawer. And it did fail, but it was a grand effort.
Some of them were saved. They were survivors.
Well, of course, the 25,000 that already made it to Shanghai did survive. But after those 25,000 arrived, the Chinese government said, wow, these refugees are really successful. They've built a productive community. They're an asset to the city. Let's bring in more. We can save more Jews. We'll set up a whole nother community in an empty area where they can, create their own community, and it will be set aside for them.
You know what I find fascinating, Nicole? I've done programs, I've done research, I've never heard of this.
I wanted to say in promoting this book that it was the first time it had ever been exposed in English, and my editor was the editor-in-chief of Houghton Mifflin Harcourt said, nope, I have found 2 mentions of it in nonfiction books. This is how little it's been known. She said, you can't say it's unknown. You have to say it's almost unknown, because they did a literature search and they were able to find in 2 obscure nonfiction books that were written in the 1950s a mention of this, a paragraph about this plan. So it has been mentioned in print before, but it went by, it was forgotten, and as far as I know, this is the first attempt to bring it out to a really wide audience.
You did something else also, which I found very interesting. Thomas Green was a black man. And as you say, the jazz people a lot of them were black, they came from the United States. And you wrote about the acceptance and the level of opportunity they had, which was also another statement you were making.
Right, and it has more levels than you might think. There was more opportunity.
At that time?
At that time in Shanghai, there was much more opportunity for a black musician than in the West, just because of the race laws in America that didn't exist there. And Shanghai was very international. So when a black man arrived there, he'd look around and see people of all different colors wearing dress from all over the world, and he wasn't so odd anymore, because there were a lot of people from foreign countries. So there was this general level of freedom and opportunity. There was something else to it too. The Shanghainese, like all the people that lived in the big treaty ports in the eastern seaboard of China, those cities were colonized. The Opium Wars ended with European powers being given little colonies called concessions in the big cities. So in Shanghai, there was a French colony called the French Concession. Inside it was France, the rules of France, the government of France. Then there was an international settlement run by England and Britain. And inside that was a little, English American world, which, by the way, imported Southern race laws, wouldn't you know?
Right.
So in this one district, black Americans couldn't go, but in the rest of the city, they had opportunity. But the Shanghainese, the Chinese that lived there, felt enslaved because they were colonized by foreign powers who did nothing to help them repel the Japanese invasion, were only interested in profit, in money. And so there was this resentment. Then these black musicians arrived, and Uncle Tom's Cabin was really popular in Chinese. Everybody had read it. And when they arrived, they were greeted with, oh, you've come right from the cotton fields. You've come straight from the jungles of Harlem. That was actually a line from a poster advertising their performance. So there was this feeling of compassion that came along with being, finally, people that have been enslaved worse than we. And I think that dynamic played at least a small role in the acceptance of the Jewish refugees that were to pour in years later, the 25,000 that poured into Shanghai.
Makes sense when you think about it. My God. Let me ask you something. What's the reaction? What has the reaction to this book been?
Well, interestingly, there has been more interest in this book in China than anything I have written.
In China?
Yes, they loved The Last Chinese Chef, But they
Yeah,
love
that's
this more. It's only halfway through being translated into Mandarin. CCTV is already producing a documentary about Ho Fengshan, the Chinese consul in Vienna, who, by writing phony visas, saved about 10,000 lives. And they said, Chinese don't really know about him. I said, that's right. All Chinese should be proud of this. So they're making a documentary right now about him. And this is kind of funny. They really wanted the gaming rights to this book.
Gaming rights?
They had in mind some video games where Chinese kids could be Ho Fengshan, saving, and going up against the Nazis and,
Wow.
being the hero that he was. They've opened a Holocaust museum in Shanghai.
Have they really?
Yes, they have, in the Ohel Moshe synagogue in the former Jewish ghetto. They have opened departments of Jewish studies at the big universities. You can now go to university in China, get a PhD in Judaica. All these, to me, are signs that China wants the world to notice what it did during the Second World War.
That's incredible.
Only China and the Dominican Republic said, yeah, we will take sure, Jewish refugees, bring them. Any Jewish refugees that come to us can settle in our country. And now China's reaching a point where perhaps
Amazing.
it's far enough in time away from the fight between the communists and the nationalists. These were humanitarian acts of the nationalists. But now we've come to a point where all Chinese are proud of China's efforts to stand against the Holocaust. And they have an exhibit that's going around America about the Shanghai ghetto. I saw it at the Kansas City Jewish Community Center a few weeks ago. Photos, text in Chinese and English.
Really?
Yes. China wants the world to know that it stood up in the Second World War.
Well,
and that's one reason they're excited about this book.
Well, I have to say they should be, because there's a lot of things that are very prideful in
Yes.
this book.
I feel that way too.
Yeah, you've done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. I have to come to your house if you're going to cook some Chinese food.
Oh, my husband is an amazing cook. In between summers at law school at UNC Chapel Hill, he won the North Carolina State Pork Championship. I think he might be the first and last Jewish person to ever take the title. But he loves to cook, so come on over.
I love
No
it.
restrictions in my kitchen.
Okay. Anyhow, say goodbye in Chinese.
再见.
At the end.
And thank you. 多谢.
Chichen. Susan, I thought that was wonderful.
Oh my goodness, she is fascinating.
Isn't she? I have to tell you, I'm going to lend you the book.
Oh, I
Okay?
can't wait to read it.
I had no idea about some of the things that she wrote about. I had no idea about the Holocaust. I really didn't, and it was a treat to read it.
Well, she is certainly one special individual,
Yeah.
and I think it's remarkable that the JCC brings together authors like Nicole to educate the community.
You are so right, and thank you for that, and thank you for being with us. Be with us again next week when we have another look into the Jewish world. Goodbye from Mosaic.